To the Middle East now, and the Committee to Protect Journalists has said the killing of 31 Yemeni journalists in an Israeli airstrike last week was the second deadliest single attack on the press ever recorded by the committee. In their report published today, the committee says the strikes signal a deadly pattern of attacking reporters and newsrooms on the ground. The attack was described by one of the paper's editor-in-chief as an unprecedented massacre of journalists. Let's speak now to Niku, Jafarnia, Yemen and Bahrain researcher at Human Rights Watch. Your reaction to that report by the Committee to Protect Journalists and their description of that attack killing 31 journalists.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me today. I mean, I'm really glad that the CPJ has been able to put out a report like this because this attack was absolutely atrocious. I mean, Israeli forces have been attacking journalists in Gaza for the last 2 years and in Palestine for longer than that, and in Lebanon and now in Yemen as well in the last 2 years. And yet the international community is not doing enough to stop this. And what we just saw in Yemen is absolutely devastating. I mean, we're talking about the lives of potentially 31 journalists. I know CPJ has thus far documented and verified the names of 9 of them, and yet other groups have put out the number 31, and this is, a very likely violation of the laws of armed conflict.
Are these attacks on journalists sadly becoming routine, in your opinion?
I mean, I think we can only say what we're seeing very clearly over the last 2 years. We're talking about around 200 killings of journalists, and that CPJ has at least documented in the last couple of years. A lot of these have been very clearly documented, including by Human Rights Watch. We've investigated a few incidents in Lebanon and now in Yemen as well, in which Israeli forces directly targeted journalists who were carrying out their work, or in one case, even who were sleeping at night in a complex in southern Lebanon where several journalists had been staying for a few weeks, and it was well known that they were staying there. There's not much we can say about this not being a pattern when, again, we've seen them carry out these attacks time and time again with no end in sight, because once again, we're watching a lot of governments in the West, particularly the US, continue to arm and support Israeli forces as they carry out these violations, despite the fact that we've even found their weapons being used in some of these attacks.
Can you give us an idea of some of the dangers that journalists, particularly in Yemen, are facing during the course of their work on a daily basis?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the most unfortunate things about this attack, is that Yemeni journalists are not just facing threats from Israeli forces, but also from Yemen's own authorities. Yemen's warring parties, including the Houthis, the Southern Transitional Council, the Yemeni government, have all committed serious human rights violations against journalists throughout the 11-year conflict, including arbitrary detention, torture, enforced disappearance, and even killings. We actually just released a report at Human Rights Watch last week documenting these violations in full, and we had been doing the research for over a year. One journalist had told us that a prison authority had told him that they prayed to God by torturing journalists. Other journalists had told us about severe torture that they experience, including beatings with cables, choking, etc. And some have been killed as well by authorities in these 11 years.
What's being done, and what do you want to see done?
What I would like to see done is in the context of Yemen itself, I would like to see domestic authorities respecting freedom of speech and protecting it as they should be, because the Yemeni people deserve to be able to speak about what is happening in their country and abroad without fearing that they are going to be silenced or harmed and have their rights violated in this really extremely brutal way. On an international level, I mean, for 23 months now, we, again, have been documenting violation after violation in Gaza, first and foremost, but also in Lebanon, in Yemen, in Syria, and in Iran by Israeli forces. Of course, we've also documented a lot of violations by armed groups and by Iranian authorities in Israel, and yet we have seen the international community sit very idly by with just some statements here and there. But as long as Western states continue to fund and support and arm Israel and refuse to draw a red line to end these provisions and support, we are going to see a continuation of these violations.
Niku Jafarnia, thank you very much for speaking to us. Yemen and Bahrain researcher at Human Rights Watch. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.